I'm not putting out. That's the good thing. It's just really
Take
hot.
your top off, E-Top.
Yeah, like.
There you go. There's the start of the episode. Hello, you are listening to Off Radar with me, James Smith.
Me, Neil Brock.
And me, James Etop.
It's a movie podcast.
We can do characters that fly and shoot laser beams and do woo.
Beneath all of that, it's all about friendship.
Playing the drums until his hands are bleeding.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each head off and watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone, then waffle about it for your listening pleasure.
Furthermore, if you want to join in and suggest a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and review. It really helps getting the pod out there. For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar.
I think you need to turn off Etok's camera already.
Hey guys, and welcome back to this very special Halloween episode. We're on part 2 of 3. I'm James Smith, and I am joined by James Etok.
Boo!
And Nige, Neil Brock.
Hello.
Who we call Nige. And if you haven't listened already, go back and listen to part 1, which was all about the 1988 film They Live. But today we are discussing From Dusk Till Dawn, which was released in 1996. It was directed and edited by Robert Rodriguez, who it was a slightly strange one for me. It was like when I was studying film studies, I kind of got forced to watch El Mariachi as one of these,
classic.
like it's one of those films that you like because it was basically his first film. It was made on nothing, and it's one of these films like you get kind of made to watch as a student, which I absolutely loved. And then they kind of made into Desperado. He's also known for Sin City. He's teamed up with Tarantino a number of times, I think, with the like Grindhouse and
He did Planet Terror.
Planet Terror, yeah.
It's written by Quentin Tarantino. I think it's also important to say the story was written by Robert Kurtzman. It stars George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, you got Harvey Keitel, Juliette Lewis, and then you got a few kind of big names that pop up through the film, I guess. But maybe we could go into them as the film.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Happens. So James, I take it we'd all seen this film, right? Before the pod.
Oh yes.
Yeah, same for me. I watched it at about 18, I think, and have watched it a couple of times since. But yeah, Ito, you picked this for us to watch. So for anyone who hasn't seen it or has seen it, maybe a little bit of a refresher of what happens.
I've written it down, and hopefully this will be very quick and very short. The Gecko brothers, Seth, played by Clooney, and Richie, played by Tarantino, are fugitives on the run, which is obviously the very definition of fugitives. The film basically follows them on their way to the Mexican border. At one point they have a hostage. They encounter a family. Harvey Keitel is the father, a pastor who's lost his faith, or having a crisis of faith is the best way to put it. His daughter is played by Juliette Lewis. His son is played by Ernest Liu, or Liu. Liu, I think is how you pronounce his surname. Seth kind of kidnaps the family and says, "You're going to drive us to the border in your RV. We need to get to the border because that's where our contact is going to get us into Mexico, where we are outside of US jurisdiction and we'll be safe and sound."
It's okay, honey. Everything's going to be all right.
You listen to your daddy, Sugar, and you don't do anything stupid. You two. Simon says, sit the fuck down. Sit down.
The meeting point is at a strip club. What do you call it? A dive bar? It's not exactly a nice place to go.
Yeah.
It's only for bikers and truckers. Only bikers and truckers, man. So they go to this bar called the Titty Twister, which is, as you can imagine, a strip club. And yeah, they're waiting for their contact to arrive, and it has probably one of the most bizarre twists in movie history because you just do not see it coming. Because this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it. If you're listening to this, stop and go and watch. You have to stop.
Please, for your own sake.
Yeah,
for our sakes, for everyone's sake, stop.
Yeah, it's
Stop
one of the
listening
best.
to us.
Yeah, just stop it. Just
Not
never
altogether.
listen again. Oh no, I've gone too far. I told him never to listen.
We are going to go in there. We're going to take a seat. We're going to have a drink. We're going to have a bunch of drinks. And we're going to wait for Carlos. Let me say something. I'm very happy about where we're at. We got a real nice, I don't fuck with you, you don't fuck with me attitude going on. So if everybody just keeps playing it cool, and I'm talking to you too, Richie, and everybody's going to get what they want.
Well, I mean, tensions are high throughout the scenes in the bar with the bikers and questionable patrons. And then, it turns out the strippers, the owners of the bar, everyone, and a few of the kind of members there are all vampires. And they have this huge, wonderful, ridiculous comic book battle. That is. I think that's a fair synopsis of the movie. Isn't
I think
it?
that's absolutely nailed.
But
Yeah.
the twist, the twist is so good. So I remember like back in, I want to say like 96 or something. Me and my father used to go to car boot sales.
I thought you were going to say a strip bar then.
yeah, like, way, what a
Questionable
father.
things going on in the Eton household.
So, my dad was the owner of a strip bar. No, me and my dad were heading to an early morning kind of car boot sale on a Sunday morning, and for American listeners, and it's like flea markets, kind of that kind of thing is the equivalent. People park their cars in a big field and unload whatever they're selling. So we used to do that throughout the early 90s. Anyway, me and my dad are driving there one Sunday morning, and we always like chat in the car. My dad goes, it's so funny when I look back. So the movie had just appeared on Sky Movies, so it'd been like 96, I guess, early 97. And my father says, he goes, I watched a movie last night. I was like, right. He's like, you know that guy out of ER? And I was like, he's like, because this was George Clooney's breakout role, really.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, he's fantastic in it. And he goes, I think he said like George Clooney. I said, yeah, George Clooney. He said, so he's in this movie, and it's him and this other guy. He doesn't know Tarantino. He's like him and this guy, and they've got a hostage, and then they get another bunch of hostages, and they go to this strip bar. My dad's telling me kind of like, as I've tried to do, probably my father did a better synopsis than me, to be honest. And he just goes, yeah, at one point in the movie he said, it's got the weirdest thing where just suddenly it turns into a vampire movie. And I was like, what? And then I think about a couple of months later, my parents went on holiday. You know, you're flicking through the channels for something to watch, and it said From Dusk Till Dawn, and I was like, oh, this is the film. So I knew the twist was coming, but it still was wonderful to watch nonetheless. This film was so important to me in my early days of, you know, you get to those late teens and you're like, I want to discover film, and, you know, that kind of thing. I think each of us has been through that, where I think all three of us have done it. We've all kind of made movies, whether it be animation or live action. We've got, you know, Nige's done his movies, Smith's done the Bembo classics. I've done some crazy shit. So yeah, it's you do those. This was one of those movies that made me want to work in that kind of industry, and also it was one of the first movies where I was able to appreciate a director's style. Like Rodriguez has got such a strong visual sense, and the way he composes everything and things, the takes and everything. I just thought, wow, I love this movie, and I know it is what it is. Yeah, I just think this movie it's very special to me. That's the best way to put it.
So when I was probably some age between, I don't know, 12 and 15, rented this from Blockbuster Video, so the classic,
Yes.
going back a bit, VHS,
Blockbuster
and had a few friends who'd come round to my house. Some of the guys who I watched Happy Gilmore with, which we discussed in a previous pod, so Dave Gunnin, Mark Stewart, I think Tom Rowlands was there as well.
Tom was there.
Good old Tom. But
Tommy boy.
so we heard this film was like, it was really like sexy and violent and crazy and all these things. We thought, this is going to be great. So we put it in and we watched the first, 20 minutes, half an hour, and we're like, it's nothing like what it's supposed to be. This is really boring. And we actually stopped the film, went out and just played football and just had a laugh basically for a bit, as you do when you're kids, and sort of we came back late and we were like, we might as well watch the rest of the film. And literally about 3 minutes after we put it back on, like everything kicks off and we're like, mind blown. It's like, oh, this is what we were waiting for. And it was such, as you say, such an unexpected twist, like so out of nowhere. You just think it's a very serious... No hints. It's like a serious crime drama. It's like a classic Tarantino film, which we probably should have enjoyed, but we're probably a bit too young to kind of really get on with that type of film. And it absolutely blew my mind. I remember watching it and just being like, well, you're like, what the fuck's going on? That's pretty much the reaction you get.
So kind of similar, I watched this or found this at probably 16, 17. Maybe in some ways, like, I really enjoyed that first half at that age, but I kind of was, because I was so invested into that type of film, like having, like I said, like watching like El Mariachi and like being this like student of film. When that bit came, I was like, what? And at that age, I just didn't get it, and I didn't like it because you know, I didn't really want the vampire bit. I wanted the kind of, you know, the resolve of this kind of crime thriller family kind of friction to be resolved, which, you know, obviously does kind of happen, but in a slightly different setting than what it sets out to be. I mean, you mentioned about the cast, and I think it's really important to note that, like you said, like Clooney, like throughout his whole career, before this and then after this, has always been seen as like a clean-cut, very nice, like, you know, he was in ER, he was in, like, I don't know, Friends, and then after this film,
One Fine Day.
Yeah, exactly. He's always cool. He does Nespresso adverts now, you know, like even now, like I couldn't imagine him in something like this. So it's so unexpected to see him as a complete and utter wanker who, you know, is ruthless. He has values, which are his family values with his brother, which is basically the kind of only values he has at the start of the film, at least.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of grounds him at all, really. Yeah, he's pretty much a bit of a psychopath, isn't he? So.
And then Tarantino plays the character you expect him to play, which is a very weird kind of surreal, like,
foot lover.
Yeah,
a man who loves
he does
feet.
love feet.
Again, it's like Tarantino, isn't it? With
but
Lewis.
I think this is like probably Tarantino's best role, because it's like you
hate him.
Creepy. Yeah, you hate him. He's creepy. He's a monster. And he also plays the like subdued.
Well, he's like a psychopath, isn't he? Because he has no remorse when he kills that woman in the truck.
He's also got like really bad. He obviously does have learning difficulties to some degree. But one of my favourite scenes in that movie, and it's not because what's said, but because of you get his point of view of everything, where Juliette Lewis first walks into the room and they see her for the first time. She stood there in a bikini, having just been swimming. And he just and like in his mind, she turns to him and says, like, "Will you?" I think she says, like, "Will you eat my pussy or something?" And he just goes, "Yeah, sure." And then it cuts to the next shot, and she's just stood there, like, looking forward. And then, like, later in the RV, he says to her, like, "If you want me to do that thing earlier, you know, the thing you said," and she's like, "What?"
Richie, would you do me a favor and eat my pussy for me, please?
Sure.
Richie, hey.
It just shows that, oh no, this guy is mentally unhinged, and basically Seth Clooney, played by George Clooney, is his carer, but also the guy that has brought him into this life of crime. I mean, there's the beautiful line towards the end of the movie when Clooney has to kill his brother, who's turned into a vampire. He's like, "Here's the what is it? The peace in death I couldn't give you in life," and it's such a beautiful movie, like quote, because it's like, yeah, I couldn't give you that peace, so boom, you know.
And then you've also got Harvey Keitel again, like we talked about Clooney being
so good.
Off cast. Harvey Keitel, you know, often plays or did play like a mobster, like a very hard man. But in this, he's like
Bad Lieutenant.
He's
Christ.
like a kind of, well, he was religious. His wife has died. He's a very gentle, considered family man. And
so good.
He's a man who's lost his faith, isn't he?
That's right. He's lost his faith, which is part of the point of the whole kind of vampire thing, I think. If there's a hell, there's a heaven. Someone says, I think Clooney says that. I think Clooney tries to persuade him at one point, you need to get your act together and start believing again, basically.
I know that whatever is out there trying to get in is pure evil straight from hell. And if there is a hell, and those sons of bitches are from it, then there has got to be a heaven, Jacob. There's got to be. So which are you? Are you a faithless preacher? Or are you a mean motherfucking servant of God?
It's classic kind of Tarantino in a way, I suppose, in the sense of some of the casting. Now, the role of Clooney was originally offered to Travolta, who said he wanted to do Pulp Fiction instead. So he did that. Wow. But then if you look at some of the other people cast, you've got, there's Sex Machine, isn't there? And then there's also Tom Savini, who's really well known in the horror genre. He's like someone who's done a lot of like makeup design and sort of creature design type stuff as well, hasn't he? Because I know he did some of the stuff from Dawn of the Dead. There's a scene where a biker gets his like arm ripped off in one of those like blood pressure machines. I know that he had a big sort of part in that, and it sort of calls back to some of the older films that Rodriguez did. Like he's got that pistol that he kind of wears in his crotch, and that's actually in the suitcase of Desperado that
Banderas.
Antonio Banderas. And then there's another guy, Fred Williamson, who plays
Fred
Frost.
the Hammer Williamson,
and he's a guy who was in the blaxploitation genre of films in the 70s, similar to like Jackie Brown as well, when they called Pam Grier back in to kind of have a bit of a career renaissance. And that's classic sort of Tarantino's way of doing things, like people he loved to watch in films from sort of his childhood, bringing them back and just chucking them in a film and seeing how they roll. And like Juliette Lewis as well was in Natural Born Killers, that I know Tarantino had some involvement in as well, and just loved her as an actress, was a friend and thought she'd be perfect for the role. And Juliette Lewis, like after this film, didn't do loads, but a few things I've seen her in, she's utterly fantastic. And she's also really good lead singer in a band as well. If you've ever checked out, I think it's Juliette Lewis and the Bad Things or something like that. She's very good.
She in my notes, because I think what I kind of was talking about this movie, there's so much I love about this movie, but the casting is so good. Like you mentioned, Fred the Hammer Williamson, like from the blaxploitation movies, his character's great. Tom Savini. It's like they're in the movie in that last third. But they're so defined. It's so wonderful. Like when Fred Williamson is doing his whole Vietnam, I think it's Vietnam he's talking about. He's like, well, you buried with the bodies and all. He's doing this story, and it's like, it's a bit of a bait and switch, because you're like, oh, he's going to give his origin story. But really it's all the, Tom Savini's back to the vampire. So, no, it's such a great, just the stuff he says. But Juliette Lewis, I wrote in my notes, she's, whenever you see her in a movie, she is amazing. She is really like, she was in Cape Fear. Of course she was.
She was. California as well, with old Duchovny and Pitt.
She is a fantastic actress that I don't know why. I mean, there probably is an interview somewhere, but just kind of stopped acting in the 90s. And it's just like, I think Hollywood was less for it, because I think she was so good in Natural, because she's fantastic in this movie. Like, you see her going through so many emotions. One of my favourite bits of acting from her in this movie, and it's a bit of a comedy bit, when they're at the table, and like, again, another thing I love about this movie is you get the feeling that Seth does bond with the pastor and his family to a degree. It's like, he's still a psychopath, but there's an element of him that he respects the pastor in some way. And he's like, yeah, look, I've dragged you here, celebrate with me, drink with me. And like, he hands the shot glass to Juliette. She was like, I will have one. And she has one. And she's like, her reaction to having a whiskey shot is so brilliantly acted. And then she has another one, and clearly she's getting a bit tipsy. Like, I will have another one, and just knocks it down.
Here we go. You slam it down, you knock the glass down on the table, all right? 1, 2, 3. Scotty, you ready? Here we go. You ready for one?
Okay. No, you won't.
Yes, he will. Yes, he will, because I'm not drinking by myself. Okay, round 2. You ready? Here we go.
Yes, I'll have another one, thank you.
With that drinking scene, I love, the boy, the son. He also has a shot, and he kind of looks to his dad, and his dad's like, Harvey Keitel's like, nah, you don't.
Yeah.
But there's a few moments between the kid, the son, and Clooney, which are just really funny.
The bit in the van when he grabs him
and he said, "We're in fucking Mexico, you fucking piece of shit," and he just grabs his head and shakes him. And I was like, where did that come from?
Oh, baby, we did it. We're in Mexico. We're fucking in Mexico, you little piece of fucking shit. Come on, can't get out of here.
I think Keitel, this is probably my favourite Keitel role. I know people go, oh, Winston Wolfe and Mr. whatever colour he was in Reservoir Dogs. I love him in this film because it's so against type, as you said, Smith. And I think he does this whole pastor having a crisis of faith beautifully. Like, there are moments when he's welling up talking about his wife and stuff, but also he's so almost like cut off from it. And the way he interacts with Clooney's character, it's like, if I had a killer who's known on this big crime spree and he's got a gun to my, and I'm driving to Mexico for him, Harvey Keitel's character is like a bit of a wise ass to him and go like, I think we've had enough, discussion for this trip. And he's like, I'm just trying to be nice, Seth Gecko's reaction. But yeah, as the movie progresses, especially when the vampires come out to play, as it were, you get that sense that Seth really, like, at one point he walks up and he goes, "We've got the most powerful weapon in this room," but he's like a man without faith. And Harvey Keitel punches Clooney. Clooney goes around. You're like, well, Clooney's going to kill him now. And Clooney just gets up and he's like, you need to, and it's like, wow, I think anybody else he gets shot, and
that's the first moment that Clooney kind of relinquishes control, because through the whole film, Clooney's character Seth has been in control of this situation or any situation.
That's beautifully said.
He is the controlling one, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm giving you control, and he gives control to Harvey Keitel's character, even at the point where Harvey Keitel's character gets bitten. And he knows that he's going to turn. He still trusts him. And it's like, how can you trust this guy you've only just met? And
when he realises he's been bitten as well, you see Clooney going to a rage and he bangs on the door. He goes, "You motherfuckers!" Because he's like, this guy, I wanted this man and his family to survive. So and even at the end, like when he turns to Juliette Lewis, you can tell he's genuinely sorry that she's lost all of her loved ones. Very remorseful, yeah.
And when the boy dies, I was genuinely like upset. I really didn't want him to die. Like know that. Because I couldn't really remember who died, and that Tarantino's character is definitely going to die, and he's going to probably die first, and then all the kind of the guys we meet later on, although you really do root for them, like you say, even though
definitely, they've all got huge personalities.
Even though they're only in the film for 25 minutes before they killed
great
off.
Lines, great look, great props, everything about them is fantastic.
We got to give a shout out to we kind of mentioned it earlier, Salma Hayek. It's her scene is funny. Whenever I think of From Dusk Till Dawn, I don't think of that scene, and it's crazy because I do love, funnily enough, short Spanish hot women. Funnily enough, what a surprise. And she's incredible looking in this. She's like, clearly, and I think this scene has been a topic of debate over the last few years, with a lot of obviously changing opinions of the way women are portrayed in film and stuff. And I totally understand that. Again, within the context of this movie, it is what it is. But I don't always think about this scene. But when you see it, it is just like everybody in that room, almost like you don't even think they were acting, because she's there doing this performance, and it is just really, you're almost drawn into it. It's this stunning, beautiful woman, and she's doing the whole thing. And, that's the word, Nige. And that's the whole point of it, though, isn't it? She is part of this army of evil, and she's clearly getting people in the room to almost loosen their guard. Is that the right word? It's
like a siren, isn't it? And the sea is drawing the people in.
Beautifully said, Nige. That's exactly what it is. And
a couple of things about sort of Salma Hayek in this, like Rodriguez obviously wanted her after doing Desperado together and offered her the role, but she's like pathologically terrified of snakes. Now, if you recall having seen this film, she's got a giant snake wrapped around her neck. So how did he manage to get her to do it? Well, he actually told her that he had offered the role to Madonna and she was really desperate to take it. So Salma Hayek went and saw a psychologist for 2 months to get over her fears, just so she could shoot this scene. And you kind of said about like everyone being transfixed and mesmerized by it, but it wasn't choreographed. He just said to her, just go and do your thing up on the stage. And he did a very similar thing, Rodriguez, when he made Sin City with Jessica Alba.
In the bar.
When she does that incredible dance, again, very similar. Just let them do it. And they did such a unbelievably fantastic job. But yeah, I can't imagine that being anyone other than Salma Hayek, sort of watching it back now.
She has so few lines in the film, but again, she's very quotable. Like when she's doing that, when she has the confrontation with Clooney, like, I hope you taste as good as your brother, and he shoots, he's like, fuck you. But that shot is one of my favourite little moments in the movie, where he shoots her, she goes down, and then the next shot is her just raising up into shot, and she walks towards him, and he realises he's got no guns in his bullets in his gun, and Clooney just kind of strikes this thing of like, okay, I'm going to get punched now, and then she just whacks him, and he goes flying across the room, and then they're having this confrontation. She's got him pinned to the ground, and he's like trying to get his gun ready, and she does that whole thing about, at my command you'll lick the dog shit from my boot heel, and he's like he does like this smile,
and at my command you lick the dog shit from my boot heel. Ooh. Since you'll be my dog, your new name will be Spud. Welcome to slavery.
No thanks. I already had a wife.
I never really thought about this until I've just said that line. That implies that he was married at some point, which kind of gives his character all the more like, that's interesting. But I think she's great in this film. Like Cheech, is it Cheech? Is that how you pronounce it? Cheech Marin?
Yeah, Cheech Marin, yeah.
Plays 3 roles in this movie. Like he's the guy at the border.
There's the classic line, isn't there? Surely you know the classic line when they're coming into the club for the first time.
Yeah.
About all the different types of pussy. I believe.
We'll insert that clip. Definitely.
Yeah, I think you definitely should. Because if I say it, it's going to sound
well, I think you should.
Smelly.
We got white pussy, black pussy, Spanish pussy, yellow pussy. We got hot pussy, cold pussy. We got wet pussy. We got smelly pussy. We got hairy pussy.
It's again, but the funny thing is about this movie, much like the Salma Hayek thing, I think sometimes people define this movie by, like any movie, you define it by a certain scene. Like we were talking in the previous episode about They Live, and it's like, the fight scene is such an iconic bit. With this, I think people often go to that scene with the pussy speech, as well as the Salma Hayek kind of dance, and they are, don't get me wrong, very memorable scenes, which is why sometimes a scene will transcend a movie. But for me, this movie is so much more than those two scenes. It's I always described it as almost like a comic book movie. It feels very like, obviously vampires, you're going to get that. And I said in the first episode that I've never been the biggest fan of the horror genre, and especially like prosthetics, yeah. Just like, oh no, it's a person made up to look like a monster. Oh no, I can clearly see that's rubber and stuff. But there's something about this movie where it knows what it is. It's not like, this is the scariest thing you've ever seen. And it's a bunch of guys who love making films, and as Nige said earlier, love the people that came before them, and were like, we're going to just do, like, we're going to have Savini involved, we're going to have Fred Williamson involved, we're going to celebrate the horror genre in this bizarre movie that has nothing to do with horror.
If this film was just set in this bar and it was basically a standard second half, almost Cronenberg sort of, ridiculous, over the top horror, not very scary movie, I don't think I would have liked it. But the fact that you got that bit before it where you're so invested in all those characters, it really works, and it shouldn't work. Like, it really shouldn't work. You shouldn't have basically like a Tarantino half and a Rodriguez half, which is kind of...
That's a really, wow, yeah.
Yeah, it is. That is exactly what this film is. Yeah, absolutely.
But they shouldn't really work together, should they? And because you're so invested in every one of those characters in different ways, you really hate Tarantino's character. Clooney, you like him because he's cool.
Well, it's charming as hell, Clooney,
he's,
in this.
He's a nasty person. You love Harvey Keitel's character and the two kids, and there's no way you want them to die. So all of a sudden, like... that you're playing with those emotions, and then you're shoved into this ridiculous out there situation where vampires are ripping people to shreds and like morphing into creatures that in a normal film, like, I would probably go, that's not scary, that's not a horror film, that's not. But because you're so like drawn in, well, for me anyway, because I'm so drawn in with this journey that they've gone on, and I love the fact at the end of it that it almost returns back to the end of Tarantino's story. So they come out, they defeat the vampires, obviously there's loads of spoilers in this one already, but pretty much everybody dies apart from Clooney and the girl. and they kind of drive off, and you're like, oh wow. You kind of want to see where their next journey will take them. And, I'm sure, some, like we said in They Live, once again, we end a film very well. And so many films have that scene too many, or they don't know how to end it. But, Tarantino is a master at writing endings, I feel. And once again, to have Clooney's character, say, no, you're going to be all right on your own because she wants to go with him. For me, was a genius stroke.
Need some company?
Kate, do you know where I'm going? Do you know what El Rey is?
No.
Go home, Kate. Maybe a bastard, but I'm not a fucking bastard.
He just gets in the car and he goes, I may be a bastard, but I'm not a fucking bastard. And I was like, I love that line. It's just such a great line, because it's like, yeah, he is a bastard, but even he has principles. I'm not going to take this girl into a horrible, horrendous, world, even though he's just put her through all that.
Oh, well, I love, if you call in that kind of the Tarantino ending, I love the Rodriguez ending where it goes to the back of the bar. You see the
Aztec temple.
Yeah, the Aztec temples and all stuff. And then Dark Knight kicks in, which is an absolutely fantastic tune, which works so well with the film. And I just love that bit. I think we're kind of not polar opposites, but I think I'm very much on the vampire side. That's the bit about the film I love. And I know that was partly influenced, as I said earlier, by the way I watched it the first time. But there's something about, I hope this is coming across to the listeners of the podcast, but I love horror films. And I love that kind of that sort of action and the craziness. And like I said, the feeling of the hair standing up in the back of your neck. And with this film, it's the action, it's the crazy goings on. That fight, as you said, when the vampires first turn, it's unbelievable. There's so much going on. There's something to look at absolutely everywhere, just in the background, front and center.
That's really, I've never really thought about that, but it is just, there's so much going on. When you've got Fred Williams, one of my favourite things, that Fred Williams turns the table upside down and chucks each of the vampire strippers onto the thing. Yeah. All 4 of them impaled on it. It's hilarious and funny, because even his expression when the last one goes down, the blood squirts up and he does that face of ooh kind of thing. But like you say, it's going there. There'll be someone in the background doing something. You got Tom Savini fighting on top of pool tables. You got Clooney over here, and let's be honest, one of the greatest weapons in this movie is when Harvey Keitel has the baseball bat with the shotgun. So it's a cross that he can scare off the vampires, and then he will use the baseball bat because it's in where the pump action is of the shotgun. He will use it to bang and then raise it up again. It's such a great weapon.
I love the fact that the boy has got a super soaker, and he's
got a super soaker blessed with holy water,
and it's
so
only
good.
The boy could have had that weapon.
When he's got the teller hostage at the start, and he says to her, he gives her the rules. He's like, rule 1, don't ask questions, and he holds up his gun and he goes, don't ever try and fucking run on us. He goes, because I've got 6 little friends and they can all run faster than you.
I got 6 little friends and they can all run faster than you can.
Clooney in this movie is so good. It's easily one of my favourite Clooney performances, if not my favourite, because he's so damn cool. And also that tattoo reveal as well. Throughout the movie, he's wearing the jacket. You think, what's that on his neck? And he's got obviously a tattoo there. And then at the end of the movie, he takes the jacket off. Literally, the last scene in the movie is about to get into the Porsche, and he takes it, and he's got this gorgeous, almost very 90s, but before it became the norm, almost like tribalish pattern tattoo all the way down his arm, to the point where in about 2001, 2002, I was like, I'm going to get a tattoo like that. I'm going to get that down my arm. Then I realised, no, I'm probably not going to do that, because 1, I'm not George Clooney. I could never be George Clooney. I could never be that cool.
Just in relation to the tattoo, it was George Clooney's idea for him to have the tattoo, because he had seen a film called Once Were Warriors, which is an Aussie New Zealand kind of based film.
I've seen that
too, yeah.
That's a great movie.
That's a dark film.
Yeah, Once Were Warriors, I think. I remember watching it in the 90s. Yeah, yes. Yeah, oh my God.
Anyway.
Yeah. I want you to have a drink with me. I insist. To your family. To yours.
Yeah, so ratings-wise then, what do we think? Nige, what?
It's difficult for me, really. Like I said, I'm so heavily influenced by watching it as a kid. I think sort of coming back to it quite a few years later, it was a slightly different experience, but it's still one that I really enjoyed. And there's so many great little moments, as Etok was sort of saying, all the quotes and the scenes and the bits. There's so much going on, and it's a film that ends in such a way that you just, at the very end of the film, you feel like you've been on a roller coaster, and you just kind of think, wow, that is really satisfying. It's not like a film that leaves you hanging and you think, oh god, all this happened. There's so much that goes on. And I think for that reason, for me, just because it's so memorable and there's so much sort of good stuff about it, I'm really struggling to go between like 7 and 8, and I really don't want to give a half mark, but I'm probably just going to go down to a 7. But I think it is a really good film, and it is a film you could watch sort of time and time again, and certainly over the Halloween period. If you've not seen it, it's definitely one worth checking out.
Unlike both of you, like, this was a film that I didn't really get when I first watched it at a younger age, but coming back to it, like, especially this time, like, I kind of knew what I was going to get and knew what I was going to expect, but I felt like I got more out of it, which sounds a bit weird.
Oh, wow.
Because
that's great.
Because that's bizarre, right? Like, this is a film that didn't really speak to me at the time, even though, like, all of my friends quoted it at school, and it's a film, like, I felt like I was almost, like, bullied into liking. In a nice way, because, and I kind of watched it again, like, the other day, and I totally kind of got it, and maybe it just spoke to me in a different way. And, like I said, love the build, and I think without that, the vampire stuff would have personally been nonsense. But, I loved the nonsense, don't get me wrong, but only because I was so invested, and that's a testament to a very, very clever script and, incredibly cast. So I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna go for a 7. Etok.
I mean, this is when we did our favourite movies of the 90s. I don't believe this was in my list, but I think it was, if it wasn't, it was definitely up there. It is one of my favourite all-time movies, especially from the 90s, like Pulp Fiction, and this definitely featured. I could say, oh, it's nostalgia speaking, but I could happily watch this movie again and again. Like, I didn't have to watch this movie for this review, so I know it inside out. But I thought, oh, I'll watch it again because it gives me an excuse to watch it, and I love it each time I watch it. So for me, obviously, I've always said before, repeat viewings are a big thing for me. It speaks to my comic book tendencies of, monsters, and I've always liked cool characters. I think Clooney is almost like just perfect in this film on so many levels. So I think it's beautifully cast, beautifully acted. I love the tone of the movie. I love Rodriguez's style, the dialogue, the twist, and the ending. For me, it's almost like, I'm not saying it's a perfect film, but it's pretty up there. And like, for someone that doesn't like I say, the horror genre much, it's definitely one that I happily would watch again and again. So I'm going to give it might have to pause that bit, edit this bit out, Smith, while I try and think. Because I had an idea.
Said 9.
I think go with it, mate. Go with
it. Yeah. I was gonna. Yeah, I would give this a 9 because it is just that good, in my opinion. Yeah.
No, fair play. And look, if let us know what you think, guys. Get in touch. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast, and all of that stuff is in the description below. And let us know. Let us know what you thought of this or any of the films we've done thus far. And tune in tomorrow for the final part of this very special Halloween 3-parter, where we'll be discussing Train to Busan.